Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying.
Yes, guys, welcome back to the Cannon Podcast and another episode of Scouted. We're talking about every single player who's ever been linked to Arsenal. We'll be looking at old players, new players, future players, whoever. We'll take them all. This time we are looking at Anthony Gordon. And to be fair, George, we did have a link, which we'll talk about in a second. We have just looked at about an hour worth of Gordon's clips. Really sort of quite painful one, I guess, because there's so much I like about this player. And we'll come to the deal aspect of this in a second, and maybe that's where this falls down. But yeah, we have had a link. So we heard from The Athletic on Tuesday, the 3rd of June in the morning, that Arsenal's interest in Nico Williams is long-standing. The coaching staff for Keenan Mahrez for Rodrigo. But Anthony Gordon is another who Arsenal like, but who would command a high fee. There's links back to 2024. I think there was even links maybe when he was leaving Everton. I seem to remember that. I could be wrong, but certainly Arsenal have had a long-standing interest in the player. As we say, we just had a look at his clips, which you can check out on Patreon for free on a 7-day free trial to look at what we're talking about sort of with game footage, which is always a good look, and you can find the other scouts there as well. But yeah, George, I really like him. And I think the deal's going to scupper this. But I suppose, let me start you off. I want to hear his strengths, and we'll come to his weaknesses in a second. But give me his strengths in a second. But I think a lot of the strengths and a lot of the reason I like him is something I said on the Scouted. He is kind of, I talk about the puzzle piece for Šeško of the problems that we have in the team that he solves. He solves a lot of our specific issues. Is he a million miles better than Martinelli on the left-hand side? That's a conversation. We can look at the data in a second, and the data say no, which is interesting, and we can discuss that. But yeah, I think he's a lot of head up, not getting caught down blind alleys, really good shot selection and ball striking, like early decisions, first touches, all those things that I look at Martinelli, and I love other aspects of his game, but parts of the game I'm frustrated with. Gordon has. So talk to me about the positives first of Anthony Gordon.
I think that when you look at Anthony Gordon in general, you see a potential for him to be a Heung-min Son type of winger. And that excites me tremendously. I think he's incredibly efficient in transitions. His decision-making about when to use his pace is his superpower in the off-the-ball movement. The timing about when he puts on the acceleration is just phenomenal. And his ability to I think create space with his running is one of his biggest superpowers. This is a guy that I think has supreme athletic capability. He can sprint in the 90th minute just as easily as the second. He's really important to Newcastle in the press. And I do think from a dribbling perspective, he is a phenomenal 1v1 dribbler that I really disagree with the statistics on in terms of them saying that he's poor at that. He's really good about keeping the ball close to his feet, developing that acceleration, and creating space and separation for an action, whether that's a cross, a pass, or a shot. He's probably got one elite pass in him, and that's the reverse ball on the inside, on the floor, when he cuts inside to just reverse it across his body. It's really, really good, really well spotted. And Anthony Gordon has this really good ability, I think, to have some pretty good creative passing potential, especially when you look at him in central areas and he's really got 1-2 touches and he maybe has to split center backs with the ball through the middle. He's got really good pace of pass on that, and he's really able to spot it and do well there. Then let's move to some cons, because there are some cons. For me, he's got excellent ball striking technique, but for me, he can be lazy in his application. So he's got a short back lift, check. He's got incredible power when he makes good connection, check. However, I kind of highlighted this in the Scouted, and I'd love for people just to really look for this. He shoots with his heels as opposed to his toes quite a bit of times, and it leads to really poor execution of shots sometimes, where you're going to see the ball fly over the goal really high, or at times it leads to his crossing being very inconsistent, where it's chipped like a golf chip. And it's just chipped high into an area without much direction on it, without much targeted hitting of a man. 3/4, in fact, most of Anthony Gordon's shots either end up blocked or into an area hopeful with a golf chip. They're not targeted to a man. And that's something that I don't understand, because he's got the technique to create separation. He's got the technique to create the power, by the way. He's got incredible power in his shooting boots. Like he can shoot 20, 30, 40 yards out and have supreme power with the ball. But it's all about this whole thing where he tends to shoot from his heels, leaning back far too often. He doesn't get himself over the ball enough with enough consistency. And it can lead to some really lazy execution of some of his actions. And it's why, for me, that big 1v1 dribbling critique gets peddled in stats and maybe with people, but I have a very different opinion where the dribble's fine. It's the execution of that final action after the dribble. And this is where I say, okay, this is where I understand people saying, if he's going to beat a man, so what if the execution doesn't work out? And there I'm with you with the critique. But the dribbling aspect is not a problem 1v1. He's really, really good at it. So yeah, I think as a whole, you're looking at a very interesting player that solves quite a bit of the stuff we need as far as pure pace, acceleration, efficiency in transition, creating high quality shots from turnovers. Check, 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 check. There are things to work on with Anthony Gordon. And I will end on this. I do love some of the interviews. I don't love trying to be a mental psychic about a player, but I do like the way he comes across in interviews. And I do like this one thing. He will run over his mother to get a goal and to get into the box and to really be the guy to finish. Now, I don't think it always comes off. There are things that we can tweak here that can really make him pop. However, he is, in a good way, quite selfish in wanting to end actions. And I think he is somebody that's a goal explosion winger waiting to explode. He's got some levels to go, but my God, there's some frightening potential here with some very easy coachable tweaks.
Yeah, and at 24, you really can see it. And I think again, just to reiterate, like the problems we have, he immediately solves, which for me makes a player jump up in my estimations. It's not that I don't think he's, I'm not trying to compare him to, pick your favorite wing target, Leao or Rodrigo or Marcus Rashford or whoever. But he solves so many of our specific issues. And I think the high turnover thing is a massive thing in terms of how quickly he gets his shots off. The first touch, he's so good at that. And yeah, just to maybe highlight again the selfishness, I really like. He's hungry. You can feel it in his play, in all of his off the ball running. It's give me the ball. It's timed brilliantly, and the ability to change direction at speed with the ball is unbelievable. So he's got the technical aspect of it, but the mental ability to go, actually, I want that ball and I want the ball. I want to be on the end of this cross and I want to be on the end of this pass and I want to be on the end of this shot, whatever it might be. That's something, that hunger that we have at Arsenal. And you're right. I think the reason I think the coachability and the explosion thing is an important aspect of this is put him in a system where he is expected to put a little bit more output. I think he rises to that. I really do. I think I see that. And a couple of sessions with Mikel on getting his head over the ball sometimes, I think he'll be fine. So let's move to the stats, because this is an interesting one. Compared to Gabriel Martinelli, this is from Scott Willis of Cannon Stats. This is up to end of May. This is a wide forward template. You can see the 90s played, their ages, etc. Gabriel Martinelli in the red, Anthony Gordon in the blue. And you can see, arguably, there's not much between them. Martinelli's ahead for certain things, for non-penalty goals, for post-shot XG added, for progressive passes received, for deep touches. But then Gordon's ahead for goal probability added, for what was the other one, for progressive passes and a few other things there. It's an interesting one in the numbers, because I watch them, and again, I'm always cautious, what I said in the beginning. I'm just cautious of being too because he has so many of the strengths that Martinelli doesn't have. I also think in terms of maybe the out of possession stuff, the diligence maybe from crosses and things like that as well that Martinelli does have. I don't want to get too that's definitely what we need because my other guy doesn't have it. I want to be cautious there. But why do you think the data shows this? We sort of discussed this a little bit in terms of in the 1v1s where he does do a push and run, and it's like, well, he's actually beating his man quite a lot in the clips when we saw it. But does that always get counted in the data? But equally, I don't want to fall into that trap of I like the player subjectively, so I'm just going to make the data not matter, because we have to look at the data and it's a fact, let alone our opinions.
Well, when you have a look at this radar, it speaks to actually a little bit more about Arsenal and Newcastle's differences than it does on differences of the player, more so for me. I mean, the deep touches, is that to say that Martinelli is just so much more secure than Anthony Gordon? No, it's just because we actually ask our receivers, our wingers, to receive far deeper than Newcastle ask. Like, Anthony Gordon's a lot higher as an outlet. You look at that, he's always the one on the left shoulder in which they go too long. And so, Gordon's far higher up the pitch. He doesn't get an opportunity to be in deep touches. You look at the post-shot XG, which is probably the biggest difference between the two. This is something where you have to look at Martinelli is one of the league's leaders in terms of receiving in the 6-yard box, mate, from like the left-hand side. He's been that way the entirety of the season. So when you're talking about gaining those XG shots, those are high XG chances. Martinelli's, the difference in the movement is Gordon is a transitional runner, whereas Martinelli has better off the ball movement in terms of getting into the box. It's why he's able to get in positions where the shots are probably great, but it's the execution again between the two of them that, sometimes leaves it lacking. And I think that they're very similar profiles. And that for me is the biggest question mark with the deal that maybe we'll get into a little bit more in terms of profile redundancy. But in terms of looking at the player differences between the two, I think Gabriel Martinelli is somebody who has phenomenal pace, but doesn't have phenomenal dribbling pace with it, where Gordon has a little bit more control of the ball in the dribble. He's able to change directions with the dribble a little bit more than Gabriel Martinelli, who's a little bit more straight line running in those long distances. When you look at differences between the players, I think that they both have their preferences, in terms of how they want to create shots. But fundamentally, with Anthony Gordon, you're looking at a player that I think has high goal scoring potential. And you look at Gabriel Martinelli, and he needs to be a lot more inside. Like, Gabriel Martinelli is probably more analogous to kind of those second striker wingers, whereas Gordon can be a true touchline option and can thrive with low touches there. So I think those are like the biggest differences in the profile.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that. Let's come to the elephant in the room, which is probably the price, realistically. I think for what Anthony Gordon is as a homegrown player at Newcastle, who signed his last deal in 2024, October 2024, expires in... doesn't say on Transfermarkt, but I'm pretty sure it was a 6-year deal when I checked the numbers from Fabrizio Romano, so 2030. It's going to be very, very hard to get him out of Newcastle, especially with Champions League football, etc., etc. What is your sort of price range? I'm going to throw something out there. I feel this is a move that basically only happens if we lose Martinelli. I think that is pretty much the only way I can see this happening. If we lose Martinelli for a good price and we sign Anthony Gordon, I can see that happening. I can't see him moving otherwise. I can't see us spending beyond £80 million on him, and they would probably command more, to be honest. So I just think, to be honest, I love the link. I love the player. I love the fact that we're interested. It's the exact sort of target and players that I want us to be looking at, and we're covering it because the Athletic have linked us. They've said that we like the player. I just can't see it happening.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Like £75 million, £80 million is the market for it. And I'll be honest, I don't think he's worth that, personally. I like the player. I think he has a huge goal scoring potential, and there's a lot of things I like, but there's enough to work on here, for sure. Like, he's not the complete product. I think that he walks in and solves quite a bit of Arsenal's issues, but I have to be fair. Like, when I'm looking at other prospects, I kind of have the same critique of it, and that's not 75-80 million pounds. Like, if we're buying a player for 75-80 million pounds, you're a complete player, as far as what I'd like to say. If you have things to work on, you can be anywhere from 45 to 60 million pounds. Soon as you cross into that 75, 80, 85 million pound demand, you're asking for more. You're asking, and I've said this before, that's a marquee money, and you're asking to be top 3 wingers in the world, able to walk in, operate in multiple different systems, and create huge impact from the jump. That's the demand of that type of talent, right? You can see that potentially with a Rodrigo in the right system. I don't agree that Gordon walks in and you immediately see that. So I'm more worried about that. I am worried about the profile redundancy with Martinelli. I have to be consistent. Like, if you're looking at a different type of winger and you're looking at what we might need, he probably does the role that we asked for Martinelli better than Martinelli in terms of that touchline option. Is it significantly better? Is it 80 million pounds better than Martinelli? No, it isn't. Do we need that more pace and those things? Yes. But do we need that same profile again? Or if we're getting rid of it, is that the best use of funds? Like, for example, this big transaction, say you sell Martinelli for 75 million pounds and you buy Gordon for 80 million pounds. Great. Like, you haven't spent much. Those are big deals that take a long time in terms of, is this the mentality that we should be doing right now with this squad? I don't know. So for me, I love the player. Yeah. I think that the decision to go for him, I would be in support of. He is one of those players that I think really depends on the pair. Again, unfortunately, he's not one of those that fall into the, I can see you clearly and on your own, you're a marquee. Definitely not.
Yeah. Yeah, it's tricky because transfers are so complicated because there's for something to go right and to be a hit, it has to tick so many boxes. Have we been working on you for a while, so we've sort of greased those wheels? I doubt it. Is this the right price? Are you at the right price point for the impact I expect? Probably not. Contract-wise, you're going to fit into my my sort of wage brackets and my sort of payment structure? Probably not. Are you the right profile and the right guy in terms of on the pitch and what I see and everyone's going bring and brilliant player? Yeah, you absolutely are. But I just can't see the off the pitch stuff working. I also think I don't want to force this because I don't want to go too far with this, but I do think Newcastle don't like us. And I think they have a bit of a like, I wouldn't be surprised if there was a bit of like, because it's Arsenal, chuck another 5 million on. And I wouldn't be surprised if the fact they've beaten us, there's a bit of a kind of like animosity. They see themselves as rivals. I'm telling you, I was in the stadium when they were there. They're not there thinking that they're the smaller club who we're going to pinch off. I mean, every time I speak about Isak on any public platform, the comments are just bloody Arsenal fans talking about Isak. They don't see us as this big step up as maybe we do. So it's a tricky one. I just can't see it happening as much as I'd love it to happen. The world in which it would happen, let's just build that before we close. I think Martinelli would have to go, as I say. I think again, maximum 75, 80 maximum, and even then I'm going, maybe. And then I also think we probably would need to become even a slightly more transitional side. I think we'd need to be stylistically looking into him and almost seeing him as like, you're going to become our output guy. But it's a big gamble on a guy who, in terms of his numbers, isn't crazy in terms of the output. So feels tricky to me. But what is the world in which it could happen for you?
You'd have to sell a Martinelli, but then I'm asking myself, like, okay, I'm building that for 80 million pounds. What am I surrounding it with? He doesn't work great with a Sesko. He works a lot more with a 9 that likes to drop in, and he's the one that's making the runs. So he works with a very specific type of striker. That's more of your Hugo Ekitikes. That's more of your Isaks. It's more of your Watkins. Those type of strikers. Forces that, by the way. Yep. And let's put it this way. Gordon needs if this and if that and if that and if that finally works, then I can see it. That's the type of mentality I'm taking with this type of player. Look, a lot of things that I really like. I think if I was a team in a rebuild, and I could make Gordon the face of that rebuild, I think there's big potential. And I actually think at Newcastle is the best position for him right now. Pre-prime for a team ready to challenge into Europe. He himself needs another 1 or 2 years before he's going to be a supremely effective output player in the league, which I think he'll get to. But right now, I think he's actually in the best project, in the best state of his career right now to continue that. So for him in his personal journey, this is what he needs more than what Arsenal need right now, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. We'll finish there. If you want to go check out the clips, even though we've depressed you, you can. You can do so from the link in the description. On a 7-day free trial on Patreon. Also, you get access to loads of other episodes of Scouted as well. If there are more links and things hot up with Anthony Gordon, we'll definitely do a second part. But yeah, we think this might be a sort of one and done potentially. But we shall see. You never know in the transfer window. You never know. Maybe we'll get Isak and Gordon. Who knows? Look forward to the Newcastle comments. Thank you all for being here. As always, make sure you subscribe to the Cannon Podcast if you haven't already. Thank you, George.
Thank you, good sir.
Thank you so much for watching. Thanks for keeping it Arsenal.